concert producer promoter in the Triad area. And he was asking me where I'm from. I'm from Franklinville, which is a tiny mill town in Randolph County.
Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up there?
Well, in a mill town, everybody works at the mill, and there's a company store, and you get everything there. So to go to Ashboro was a big deal to us. That was like New York City to us. So it was a very small place, and we had a tiny little farm where we grew food and had animals and stuff. And
I know you eventually ended up in High Point, which was...
yeah, I was in High Point, went to high school there, and then I went to Guilford College, and then I got a master's degree at Carolina in Chapel Hill.
And that was in, was it sociology, correct?
Sociology was undergrad, master's degree was in social work.
Wow. Well, and what was that? You did some family work, you did some, you ended up at Gateway Education eventually, right?
I was there, yes, I was a family therapist there for the preschool program. And so I worked with the parents when they were first finding out about the diagnosis that their child had a lifelong handicapping condition.
And you're talking like autism, something like that?
Autism,
maybe?
cerebral palsy, just everything under the sun. But that school was for severe kinds of diagnoses that needed physical therapy and speech therapy and occupational therapy and family therapy, and so that was my role there.
And were you sort of coordinating with the family, trying to guide them along this path of how they are to navigate life with a child with that ailment?
And working with the dynamics in the family surrounding the child with special needs, because it can take over the whole family life, including for all the other siblings, and makes it difficult for a family to still function as a unit. And so there are a lot of things to work through, especially at that stage where you first get the diagnosis and you're just realizing what life's going to be like from now on, because it's going to be different than you thought.
Yeah, because there's just constant need, constant care, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lots of appointments. Sometimes with some of the diagnoses, a lot of behavior issues, and need for respite care, and how do you keep the family relationships as normal as possible when you have so much stress? So that's a big issue.
Yeah. I imagine that this you'd have to be very organized as an individual, coordinating all these things and working with the family and everything like that.
Yes. I also developed quite a few programs for the Greensboro Public Schools and the Guilford County Schools. My master's degree at Carolina was half administrative and half clinical. So I was in that first group that had that kind of degree, and it was a 3-year master's. So I did learn how to develop programs and do all the administrative things, and that serves me well now. I've graduated from my former career and gone back to my first love, which was music and putting on concerts.
Jump right into this. This is sort of the impetus for this interview was the Flatiron concert that you had put on for one of our beloved Bruce Pioff.
Yes, and I brought a poster in case that's helpful in any way. But
here, I can try
yes,
to line it up here.
the way we got started with that, a musician named Mark, his nickname is Buddy Rowe, Mark Harrison, called me one day and said, we need to do something for Bruce. And I was aware of his situation too, and said, I agree, I think we do. And we need to, anybody that has cancer needs money, and so we should raise money, but we should also have it be a tribute. And that's what Mark was thinking too. And so we dove in and put it together in about 2 to 3 weeks' time, which is pretty miraculous. I sort of had to push all my other work aside to make that happen, but we wanted to do it quickly so that Bruce could enjoy the concert and enjoy hearing how important he's been in our community. We don't know how much longer he'll be with us. He actually has been battling cancer quietly for 20 years and doing a great job of that. But now he's come to the point where things aren't working, the treatments and managements, and so it's, he's entering the last stage of his life.
Yeah.
So we wanted to honor him, and so we contacted all of these musicians and asked them if they would be willing to be a part of the show. And of course they all donate their time, which is huge since they make their living playing music. We're asking them to work for free, and we asked each of them to identify 1 or 2 songs that Bruce Piaf wrote that they might want to do during the concert. So there were a lot of songs that Bruce wrote during the concert, and then we told them they could play some of their own songs too, because they're all songwriters. So it was really a fantastic concert. It lasted 4 hours, and the week before that concert we had a 4-hour radio show about Bruce on WQFS, and that was also fabulous, and honored him and brought in many aspects of his life. And so we've just been trying to show him how much impact he's had, especially on the music community, but on the community at large during his 50-plus year career in songwriting. And he was a songwriter before anybody stopped to think about how you get songs. And he has stuck with it. It's been his career and his passion and his mandate in life.
Honored to interview him about 8 years ago, and I had no idea what he was going through. He never said nothing about it, like you said. It was quiet. So I was just, I guess, grateful to have that wonderful interview with him.
Yes.
And I hate that I missed the concert. I would love to have been there, but I'm going through and I started watching it on YouTube now. I'm so glad it's on YouTube.
You can watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll post the link here when we get through with the interview. I'll have it posted there.
Great.
Yeah.
And we had Ben Singer, who's a very professional videographer, to do that filming, and he brought in an assistant. So 2 cameras. It's very professionally done video, so you can enjoy that.
Yeah, it seems like it was a lot of work to put all this on, to get all these wonderful artists together and get the venue and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Josh and Abby, who currently own the Flatiron and run that, were so gracious in letting us use their space, and just however we needed it to be, they made sure that it could be that way. So it was a seated concert, but we also had people out on the sidewalk visiting, because it turned out to be sort of a reunion of sorts for people who hadn't seen each other in 40 or 50 years. But they came for this concert from wherever they were. And so there was a lot of joy and a lot of reconnections that were important for people, and people ended up calling it sort of a love fest for Bruce.
That's awesome. Tell me about your relationship with Bruce and how you'd worked with him over the years.
Well, Bruce lives 1 street over from me, and we've been friends for a long time. And because I'm a concert producer, we've crossed paths a number of times professionally. So I used to have a little speakeasy over on Spring Garden Street. I had it 2 nights a week. And so I did invite Bruce and Daniel Ayers, who was one of his mentees, sort of. He was a songwriter, but he and Bruce connected and did some things together. And so I had them to do a concert there, and then through the years I've worked some with Folk Festival and other programs. Bruce played some for Fiddle and Bow, and for the last, about the last 5 years, I did most of their concerts, booked them and ran them. And then I went off the board about 1.5 years ago. So I'm not working with Fiddle and Bow now, but Bruce did several concerts with Fiddle and Bow through the years too. And he's just a fixture in Greensboro. He played City Stage back when we had City Stage, and he's always been there. But he's a very quiet presence. He doesn't promote himself a whole lot, and a lot of musicians do because they're trying to make a living and they have to promote themselves. But Bruce has always been kind of quiet and not out there trying to find all the jobs or anything, but writing songs the whole 50 years. He's produced 25 albums, or maybe even more than that, but just an incredible body of work. And he also has a master's degree in fine arts in writing from UNCG. So he's quite a poet, and his writing skills you can see in his songwriting. It's a cut above ordinary songwriting.
We were talking about Ransom Notes and so Notes from Knoxville and some of the others that he wrote that are just very profound pieces of
Yes.
writing, in sort of a Dylan-esque kind of way.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that we've gotten to celebrate him over the years. And
Yes.
I understand there was another piece of news you had for me today.
Yes. Just a couple of days ago, Scott Sawyer and I were able to present to him an award from the mayor of Greensboro, Nancy Vaughn, and city council. Presented a certificate for him, naming him Greensboro's Father of Songwriting, which really is a true moniker for him. He was writing songs before anybody in Greensboro was, and stuck with it his whole career. And so I can't remember the text of what it all said, but it was honoring him and his career and his contributions to the community and his songwriting. So he was very moved by that, and it was really a fun little celebration we had at his house, giving that to him.
I'm interested in your your collaborative ability. Like, what does it take to put on some of these shows, some of these concerts? What goes behind the scenes?
It's a lot of work behind the scenes, and that's the role I have, is making it all work and trying to make it look like it's effortless, which is not easy. But for example, with this concert, I started with getting the performers to agree to it, and then I started Tom Woods, a local graphics artist. I called him and said, would you put together a poster for us? And he worked so beautifully with me and very quickly, and also donated his time and made us this great poster. And then we needed a way for people to make donations on Bruce's behalf, and so his niece put together QR codes for PayPal and for Venmo, and so we developed several different ways that people could make a donation for him, and got that in all the posters and everything. And then we worked with the performers about what songs they would do and about the spacing of the concert, because 4 hours is not a lot of time for 10 or 11 performers, separate performers. We also wanted to make sure there was a wrap-up finale song or two where all the musicians would come to the stage and participate in that. And those were really heartwarming. We had Martha Bassett to be in charge of one of those songs, and Rebecca Newton from the Triangle to be in charge of one of those songs. And so those were really beautiful, and the whole thing was just fabulous. But it takes a lot of coordination behind the scene. When I put out the schedule that we were going to have to try to stick to, I said, you probably think this is a joke, and it sort of is, because we're not going to be able to stay on schedule, but it had 7 minutes between performers, and that's for the sound check, getting off stage, getting on stage, getting the mic set up. So it was kind of a ridiculous expectation, but somehow we came pretty close to staying on schedule.
Now, is that, you mean as in like too short of a time, like 7 minutes would
Way
be
too
way
short,
too short
yes.
of a time?
Usually the sound check's 15 or 20 minutes, even when it's a short one.
Right.
So it's way too little time. But in the situation that we had, that's why we kept it songwriters too, and mostly acoustic.
Mhm.
If we had 11 bands up there, it would take 3 days to get them all through. And they need to sound check more than individual performers too. So, part of my role is to make sure that we've got a sound person that can handle all that in the amount of time we're giving them to handle it. Make sure we've got the kinds of microphones and equipment that will be needed. Working out a keyboard to be on stage to just stay there, and that was Christy Jackson's keyboard. She left it up there for John Reese to use also. So just envisioning the whole thing and how all the pieces work together is part of my role. And I know how to do that from being around music my whole life.
Right, and we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah, because I'm thinking of all the little things like you say, you might have to adjust a mic here and there. The audio person behind the scene, he's got to fiddle with all the little levels and things that they need to do, and every instrument is going to be different, or it's going to be set to every different song or every different performer that you have.
Yes, and then there's the whole promotion end of any concert, getting the word out there in a way that the people who will come, and your audience when you're a promoter or producer, who's going to come to your concerts, and how to reach them, either through email or social media or radio or however. And of course we had a lot of help from WQFS getting the word out on that 4-hour radio show that Rebecca Kress headed up over there. And almost all their DJs participated in it because they've all worked with Bruce over the years. So we've had a good amount of media attention to it. I did send out some press releases also, but we didn't get much from that. But the whole promotion end, you can put together great concerts, but if nobody knows about it or just put it in a way that they will come, then you're defeated from the start. So you have to be sure people are coming. And we had people out the door and on the sidewalks. We had people leaving because they couldn't get in. So, we had a very successful turnout. Also part of that concert, we haven't talked about this, we had an auction, so there were people donating items to the auction. And J.R. Luther out at Southeast Systems was very helpful in that. He volunteered to be a center where people could bring donated items. And he also donated some from SE Systems. We had 3 guitars in the auction. We also did a raffle where people buy raffle tickets, and that was very successful. So between all of those, we did very well in raising money for Bruce and raising awareness so that people who want to know what he's going through now are sending him energy and love and know the situation he's in.
Yeah, David said he said it was wall to wall, and he also told me, he said it was like a reunion of Tate Street, because he said
Yes.
Tate Street back in the day used to be very different, and the music scene was different back then too.
Yes.
So,
And Bruce was very present on Tate Street. And, that's where he kind of broke out his songwriting, I guess. And a lot of people were aware of it back then. And of course, people have moved away. And we had people come from Asheville and Wilmington and kind of far away places for this concert because they knew that it would be a Tate Street reunion, an unofficial Tate Street reunion. And it didn't disappoint them.
yeah. Is there anything else you want to add about this concert that we haven't mentioned? I was trying to see if I could finish this little
I
part
wish there were a way to capture in words the feeling of the whole event, how important it was to people, and how important it's been to Bruce as he watched at home and has rewatched the YouTube video of it. And he has said things like, I had no idea people cared about me like this. And I had no idea people knew my songs. And he was really uplifted by all that. And that's been really important in his stage that he's in. And his wife, Laura, by his side always. And so they are rewatching the video, and they are re-listening to the radio show and just enjoying what they can of this time.
Yeah, that must make you pretty proud that you're able to put something forth like this.
It makes me happy. The goal was to see them really enjoying the feeling that people care about them.
Yeah.
So that was the goal, and I met my goal.
I guess the mentorship he provided
Mm-hmm.
to young musicians over the years, that kind of didn't really get, advertised as bigly as it
Because he
could
went
have.
about everything quietly.
Yeah, he was very humble about everything. Like
Mhm.
Daniel Ayers was one that
Yes.
I could think of.
And Daniel was one of the ones he helped along in his songwriting, and he's a successful songwriter. He's also a teacher. And if you saw Facebook of him visiting Bruce this weekend, he's also a Revolutionary War reenactor, so he came to see Bruce in his full outfit from that, which is kind of fun. Another young songwriter that Bruce mentored is Ranford Almond. And he's, I had trouble. I tried to get him in the concert, but he's flying around performing all over the country. And but he has written some great songs and has learned a lot from Bruce. And they've performed on stages together. Bruce was bringing Ranford Almond out into his performances when Ranford was probably about 12 years old or something, and giving him exposure all along the way.
Yeah.
So that he was able to take off in his career.
And those are important, skill sets that not a lot of people, I guess you might be overseen, is to pass that down. And that was, I guess,
Yes.
obviously Bruce saw that as something that was important.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of his legacy, I think. Also in the concert, several songwriters mentioned the influence he had had on them. And for example, Christy Jackson, who is, I forget the exact name of it, but something like the BMI Million Sellers Club or something for her songwriting. And she's had songs placed on albums by Reba McEntire and other high-level artists. She said that when she started listening to Bruce, she got the understanding, all of her songs were concept songs. But after she listened to Bruce, she realized that songs could be about stories and about people stories. And so she started then writing some story songs. So even a songwriter as successful and great as Christy talked about how she gained from knowing Bruce and his work.
And then like a concept, I guess, like an idea or something.
Like a love song, or
Yeah.
about an emotion or an idea, but Bruce has written a lot of songs about characters in Greensboro. And in many ways, he's documented the music history in Greensboro from Tate Street on forward. And some of the characters, eccentric ones, and ones who went on to be famous. And, he just documented, he wrote about what he saw and what he knew. And a lot of that stuff, now that we've lost some of those music people, it's very significant that he captured them in song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who are some of the folks? The one I'm thinking of right now is, and I'm having a brain fart, of course. Tell me some of the ones. Ransom Notes, of course, is the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yes. And they were all friends back when they were 18 years old, exploring life and just figuring out how to make careers in music and
trying to figure out who they were.
Yes, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Some of the stories I've heard are insane. But they were living life to the fullest as buddies. And Dakota Joe Dunn, another musician from Greensboro, blues musician, and he passed away a couple of years after Ransom was gone. And Bruce wrote a song about him too. There were other characters like Jim Young, whom I never knew. I think I saw him, but I didn't know him. And I think Bruce wrote a song about him. There were a lot of eccentric characters on Tate Street that he wrote about and gave them great humanity and reasons to remember them.
Mm-hmm. And that's just, I guess sort of his art.
Yes.
Sort of his ability to capture somebody's essence.
Mm-hmm. He's a wordsmith, but he also has the emotional component of being able to see who people are and capture that in words.
Yeah, and that's such a unique. That's such a unique ability.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And it's amazing that he's touched so many people, and he's had that influence and that ability and that just being humble all along too.
Yes.
And when I saw him the other day, he was even singing. He was trying to sing the whole time.
That's right.
And we like I'd bring something up, and I couldn't remember if it was like Brunswick stew or I was trying to think of the hobo he don't like no snow.
Uh-huh.
Which I asked him after his interview. I had done another story on a homeless individual who's experiencing homelessness, and I asked him in the email. I said, "Can I borrow your song?" I said, "How did I come across this song?" And I couldn't remember how. And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." So it was a wonderful tribute to that story. I kind of blended together.
Mm-hmm. That may have been a part of the blues project that matched songwriters with people experiencing homelessness. And the songwriter would talk with them until they had enough to write a song.
Yeah.
I bet it was from that.
Yeah, they had that at the Interactive Resource Center was a part of that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the concert itself of all those songs was at Greensboro College in the auditorium there. And they raised a lot of money for the Resource Center by selling the CDs and T-shirts and having the concert, the admission fees for the concert. That was a great concept.
Mm-hmm. And did you have a hand in this at all?
I didn't. That was Dave Fox that headed that up, and some of his other professors at Greensboro College. I think Neil had a hand in it, and I'm not sure who all, but that was a fabulous concept and a fabulous show and CD.
That's another, Dave Fox, that's another great musician,
Mm-hmm.
A great
We
artist.
are so fortunate in Greensboro. We have musicians here that I don't know why they stayed here, I mean, Sam, for example, or a lot of our musicians could be studio musicians in LA or Nashville or New York or something, or they could have made it big on their own, but they decided they wanted to be here. So they're big to us, but I'm sure that their opportunities and income has been limited by that choice. But we are so rich in really talented musicians and songwriters here that Greensboro, I think we're right up there in terms of the importance of our music here. We're like Nashville, little Nashville, although I hope we never go in that direction.
Okay, so that's a question for you is, you know, did you ever have the desire to sort of be, you know, some big-time music manager?
Well, I'm not a big-time music manager, but I do booking for some musicians that are more like national level musicians. What I like to do is bring them to North Carolina, because this is my home, and you know, I enjoy the music scene here and I like to contribute to it. So right now I'm doing some booking for several well-known blues musicians. Doug McLeod, he wins awards almost every year for Acoustic Blues Record of the Year, Acoustic Musician of the Year. I do some booking for him, and I try to bring him to North Carolina. And I'm doing some booking for Reverend Billy C. Wirtz, who's a blues musician. And I am going to bring him here this summer for a couple of concerts. And for Johnny Sansone, who is from Greensboro. He was with Bruce and Ransom and Dakota Joe back in those Tate Street days, a part of all those bands. And now he's a big-time saxophone player in sometimes, well, he's in New Orleans mostly, but he tours all over the country, and he passes through North Carolina at least once a year. So we're going to have some stuff with him soon. And so I enjoy hanging out with musicians at that level and learning from them. But I've always had a foot in both careers of human services and music, and I'm happy with what I've done. As long as I'm accomplishing something good, I'm happy wherever I am. I did live at Topsail Beach for a while and up in the mountains for a while, and I like to move around and experience everything there is to experience. But I love Greensboro and the music scene here.
Well, here you kind of get, you know, the best of both worlds. The mountains are maybe, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and then the beach is like 3-4 hours away, depending on which beach you go to. So you kind of get the best of both worlds here.
Yes. Now, if I could, I would probably move to Ireland, because I love Ireland, and I go somewhat frequently compared to most people. And I have a little segment on a radio show there that's called Taste of North Carolina. And so each month I get to feature a North Carolina musician on this radio show that's out of Dundalk, which is a part of Northern Ireland. And it's syndicated to some other a Belfast station and some others. So our North Carolina musicians get to be heard by people in Ireland and sometimes pick up some fans that way. Zoe and Cloyd, who are from the mountains near Asheville, I featured them, and last summer they played at a festival there, and this past month we featured them again on Taste of North Carolina with an extensive interview with them. And so, I'm trying to spread the enjoyment of North Carolina musicians by helping people be aware that they're there.
Yeah. And how often do you go to Ireland?
Usually at least once a year, sometimes twice a year.
Yeah. What is it about? I mean, what do you love most about going to Ireland?
It just feels like home to me. It feels like I belong there in many ways. but I love the music, and it's not just all traditional Irish music. I love the songwriting there. You know, they come from a tradition of great poetry and literature, and many of the songwriters there embody that with their wizardry with words and capturing emotions. And so I just love, it's a beautiful country. You can't go anywhere there that's not beautiful. I've never been anywhere that's not beautiful. And I just wander, I wander around by myself for a month and just stumble around to see what I can find. And so I don't just go to the tourist kind of destinations. I just kind of wander a lot of the time.
That's awesome. I love wandering. Sometimes that's fun.
That's the way you find the real stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking of sort of like an Andy Eversole kind of type of adventure.
Sort of. And I do, the Irish musicians I connect with, then I try to bring them here. And have brought quite a few of those to this area who maybe maybe Greensboro wouldn't have been on the map for them otherwise.
Right. You haven't, since you retired from the your social work, you haven't slowed down like at all. You've been involved in so many things, or on the board of many things. TEDx was one of them. You started to talk about that on the phone.
Yes, I love TED, and it's TED Talks. But TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. So entertainment is a big part of what TED is intended to represent. And so my role with TEDx Greensboro has mostly been to bring cutting-edge entertainment to their annual conference. And we have 3 entertainment segments. And I try to get things, my definition of what I do for TED is I try to find entertainment that makes you go, oh! That's sort of a surprise in some way, that's maybe something you haven't seen or heard before, or has a twist on it that's different. So that's one of the organizations that I bring entertainment to. And I try to stay on top of what's happening around all through the triad especially, but also the triangle, and what bands there are and what innovative musicians are doing. And so then whenever somebody calls and says, I need a band that does this, I know exactly who the right one is. So that's how I book things.
And it probably helps that you played an instrument. You played guitar at one point.
I did, yeah. And classical violin.
And classical violin too. So does this aid you in any way in your ability to play? Does this aid you in any way when you're looking for something, or when you just what it's like to play, to assimilate with the musician, if you will?
Well, I still consider myself a musician because I have the heart and soul of a musician. I smash my hands between some welding tanks, and I've had 5 surgeries, and they still don't work very well. And so I cannot play anymore. So it's a joy to me to get to be part of the music community by doing what I do, organizing. And fortunately, I'm good at organizing and know how to do that stuff. But I try to keep on top of the bands of all genres and bands of all ages. And I have to craft each booking to what the organization is looking for. For example, last summer in my River Landing concert series, that's a retirement center, I do a concert there about once a month. They said, we want to have a Margaritaville party. Well, that's about as far outside of my area of expertise as you could get. But, I just called up a few musicians and said, fill me in, who do I need to look at? I always review them first, either by live video or I go to a concert. Because I don't present anybody that I don't know that I can stand behind. But I do, I look at all different kinds of musicians. I've had Demeanor a few times. He's a combination of rap and folk music artist. I don't know how old Justin is, maybe 30-ish or something. But I try to incorporate the younger musicians when I can and get a good mix of all diversities. I book a couple of festivals, and diversity's a big part of that. Age, gender, race, every kind of diversity.
How do you keep up with all these artists? I mean, you said you're always just trying to discover people or find people or see what might match.
Well, I used to go to 3 concerts every night. So I, go and stay a while, leave and hit the next venue and hit the next venue. And that way I can know all the venues, but I can also have in my head what all these musicians sound like and what their personality style is and what audience they appeal to. So that's kind of how I keep on top of it, is by going to hear music. And there's an article that said if you go to 2 concerts a week, you add X number of years to your life or something. There's some research about this. And so I said, well, since I go to 3 concerts every night, then I'm going to live 250 extra years. That really, I do that a lot. I've slowed down a little bit because I have so much work, I can't get it all done. But I still, whenever I can, go to new venues, hear new bands, and or some of the same, especially around here, people are in 2 or 3 different bands. Maybe I know one of their bands and I know they're a good musician, but I haven't heard this incarnation that's called a different name. And so then I'll seek out and see what that band sounds like. I try to get around to everybody. It's awfully hard, so I can't claim that I have gotten around to all the bands, but when I go to festivals and stuff, I also usually go on a booking, well, it's not a booking cruise, it's an Americana cruise, where you have something like 120 concerts on the ship in a week. And I'm the only person who loses weight on a cruise because there's not time to eat ever. And I don't sleep, I just go from one thing to another. So on a cruise that has 120 concerts, I usually make it to 105 at least. And that's how I keep abreast of the national and international artists who are in Americana and acoustic music. And I've brought a lot of them here too.
Wow. Do you sleep at all?
Hardly.
God bless.
I sleep about 3 hours a night.
Good gosh.
But my mother was like that. I think it's genetic,
Okay,
actually.
yeah.
So I just fill the time with something productive.
Yeah, I think everybody's wired differently,
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. That brings me to my next question. Like, how far do you travel usually to see a festival, a concert, or a venue?
Well, just depends. If I see a festival I want to go to, then I'll make it happen. But usually the Keamo cruises, it's a concentrated way to get to see a whole lot of acoustic musicians, and they do some electric stuff too, but and those are always in the Caribbean somewhere. Sometimes they go to Aruba or somewhere near South America, Mexico, but so those are a real efficient, I don't care about cruises much, but it's a real efficient way to get to see a whole bunch of concerts, and it's actually not too expensive when you add up how much it costs for each concert. It's pretty cost effective too.
Yeah.
And when I go to Ireland, I go to music constantly, in theaters and opera houses and pubs and on the street, wherever. There are a lot of good street musicians in Ireland on Grafton Street. So I just, everything is crafted around music. One trip when I was wandering around, I had the pleasure of meeting Mick McCauley, an accordion player, at Folk Festival. And I took them to some schools and stuff. And so we had kept in touch, and while I was there, I let Mick know that I was in Ireland. I said, if you're playing anywhere, let me know. And so he called one day and said, tomorrow I'm playing down here on the map, and I was up here on the map. And so I drove 8 hours that day to get to see his concert, which was well worth the drive. It was one of those sessions that's, you go in a pub and you have to know the secret thing to say for them to open the secret door and let you in the back. And oh wow, that was such a great concert. So I do all different forms of concerts there too. And I've brought quite a few Irish musicians to our area as a result of that.
Yeah.
And a year and a half ago when I was there, I knew Bruce Molsky as a musician, but I had not really met him before. But he was over there doing concerts with some friends of mine. So I met him and hung out with him a little bit, and I said, I want to bring you to my area for a concert. And he said, wow, I haven't been there for about 30 years. So I brought him last summer to our area. We had a concert in Durham and one in Greensboro and a house concert, and house concerts are great too. My house is not big enough to accommodate that, but I am beginning to work with a new house concert, and we'll be putting out some information about that soon. House concerts are handled, the promotion is handled privately to meet the Folk Alliance rules so that you don't have licensing issues and things like that. So, but Sam is going to be our first performance at this new house concert series. And then I'm going to bring in probably Doug McLeod and Reverend Billy C. Wirtz and some of those others that I work with as a part of the tours I'm putting together for them.
I was going to say this can get it can get costly, doing going to all these places and getting all these upfront fees, I guess.
I try to make sure I at least break even on when I put on concerts, and that's not easy to do sometimes given the venue fees and everything. But as long as I have $1 million of fun doing it, then it's okay.
No, you mentioned the Folk Alliance. What is the Folk Alliance?
Folk Alliance International, it's an organization that promotes and tries to spread folk music around all over the world. And they have several conferences. They have regional conferences where musicians perform showcases and they get some gigs from that. And they have a national conference every year. It's going to be in Canada next year. But they're great places to network and to meet performers, and it's kind of like being on that cruise where you can see dozens or hundreds of performers all in one 4 or 5 day period. So those are cost effective and time efficient in those ways.
And jumping off of that, I know we've got a little bit of time left here, but I wanted to talk about Fiddle and Bow. Tell me about that and how you got involved with that.
Okay. Well, actually, I was kind of involved with Fiddle and Bow way back when it first started, and did a few things like kept the performers at my house and, would help in some way with the concerts. But after that, they kind of pulled out of Greensboro and were mostly focused in Winston. And I still went to some of the concerts, but I wasn't involved in the inner workings. But after I had the little speakeasy and that whole building shut down, so I had to find a new venue. So then I went to Double Oaks Bed and Breakfast. They have an outdoor stage, and we figured out a way to use the indoors for concerts. And while I was giving concerts there, I noticed that a bunch of fiddle and bow people kept coming to my concerts. And I knew they were board members of Phil and Bo. And so then eventually, within a month or two, Sonny, who started Fiddle and Bow, Sonny Thomas, called me and said, "We are thinking of closing Fiddle and Bow. We're losing money on every concert. It's just, it's not going well. It's a lot of effort we get 7 people to come to a concert, and so we're thinking of closing it, but we wanted to ask, just in case, if you would take it over or come on board and do what you can to make it work again, because we've come to your concerts and we see that they're working, and we see that you get 100 people there." And so they said, "Will you take it over?" And I said, "No, I've got about 50 jobs already." And they said, "Okay, we'll close it down." And I said, "No, you can't close it down. I'll come and help you." And of course that turned into being president. And
yeah, I know how this works.
Doing all the booking and all the concert production with helpers from the board for about 4 or 5 years. And I brought some great people onto the board that have continued to keep it going well, I think. Since I left the board a year and a half ago, I brought on Mark Dillon and encouraged Doug Baker to come in on it as I was leaving, and he's doing a lot of the booking now and seems to me to be doing a great job with that. And Eddie Huffman I brought on the board, and Marvin Vito. I brought on people who had skills that we needed and who are great people. And so a lot of those are still on the board. And so I think it's doing okay now. They're still doing some stuff in Greensboro and in Winston, which is the first thing I did, was broadened it to bring Greensboro back into the concert loop. And instead of having 1 concert a month, we started having 1 in Greensboro and 1 in Winston. But it's like any business, you have to make it work financially, and you can't lose money when you do concerts, so you have to make a budget for each concert, how it's going to work. And so that's kind of what was missing from the formula before I came home.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did you sort of balance the budget there? Besides, I know you said you made it to 1 concert, or 1 venue, really.
I found venues that we could afford to use, and I am up to date on how to promote concerts, and Fiddle and Bow really was not at that time. They had a newsletter that had about 100 people or something, and that was the only promotion they did. Of course, now you have to use social media, and you have to use email and whatever is at your disposal. So I pretty much set it up to have free promotions, to use the tools that are free. And so limiting the cost of everything and increasing the attendance, and that was the magic formula.
And you have to do you do the promotion, like the email and everything? Do you do that yourself?
I do it mostly. I have student interns at times that will take on some of that or make posters for me or send out emails or whatever. And the trade-off for them is that they're learning the concert business.
Yeah.
And they're a very integral part of it, and I usually let them start their own open mic or something like that to have their own thing under our purview. But
What's so funny, as you were saying this, I was thinking of, you don't realize when everything goes right, everything's cool, like nobody notices.
That's right.
But like, I was thinking of the only reason anyone would have a problem is when something went wrong. Like
Yes.
I was thinking of the documentaries that were done on Woodstocks. I know that's an extreme example, but I mean, you think of all those little things
Yes.
like they didn't think about, which was like just logistical things, food, water, shelter.
Yes. I've been around the concert business so long that I know how to make it go right and how to plan in such a way that those things aren't going to happen. But I do have things go wrong occasionally, often with the sound system, or even though you got good sound people, things happen. a cup, suddenly a chord doesn't work anymore, or something like that. One of the funniest things that went wrong, I was doing a concert at Upstage Cabaret with Bob Margolin and Tad Walters. And break time, everything's going great. Break time came. It was Bob's first acoustic concert that I had proposed to him. Let's do acoustic, because he's, of course, an electric musician mostly. And so it was going great, and we came back from the break, and there was no Tad Walters. And so I said, Bob, you got to start anyway. I'll find him. So Bob started and was doing, and I'm running all over the building looking for him. So I come back in there, and I'm going, he's just gone. And my phone was buzzing. I had the ringer off, and I heard the buzz and ran over, and he said, I'm in the parking lot. I got locked out when I went out for a smoke, and I'm locked out, and somebody's got to get me in the back door. So, I had to run where that was and get him in, and then push him onto the stage immediately. So things do happen, but for the most part, if you plan well, it'll go well.
Yeah, I had a professor who he did some work for the Grammys, and he's been doing it for, I think it was the Grammys, he's been doing it for like years.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, let me tell you, it is a miracle that show goes on at all. He said, because you will have people that are landing at the airport, and they're supposed to be on stage in like 10 minutes.
Yes. If you have time, I have a funny folk festival story.
Yeah, go ahead.
My job with them for many years was sort of hospitality coordination, and so we had this team of volunteers called Artist Buddies, but whatever comes up, we had to solve it. And so the night before the festival was supposed to begin, at about 2 o'clock, I got a call. I had sent Artist Buddies to Charlotte and to Raleigh to pick up performers that were flying in from India. And so I got calls from both places saying that even though they're different airlines in different cities, the airline lost all the instruments. And they had an 8 o'clock school performance the next morning, and here it is, 2 o'clock. So I've got to find a sitar and tablas and very unusual Indian instruments. And so, everybody's asleep but me at 2 o'clock. And so I got on Facebook and said, whoever's out there, I need help now. I've got to have these instruments. And I put pictures of them and said, does anybody know anybody that has them? And the response was absolutely remarkable. I had about 20 responses from all over North Carolina, just whoever happened to see it float by, saying, I have a friend that knows somebody that plays sitar. And so at about 6 in the morning, I was running to a musician's house near Burlington to pick up tablas. And I got a hold of a UNCG professor, and it turned out they had a sitar in the department. And he said, I'll meet you at the school before 8 o'clock. And so I picked up the tablas. We conversed at the school, pushed them out on stage with instruments they had never touched before, and they did it. But those are the things that are going on behind the scenes that make it look like everything went fine.
Flawless. Wow. Well, this has been wonderful. I wish we could have had you on for longer, but unfortunately, television only allows so much time,
Well, it's delightful to meet you and talk with you.
Oh, this has been amazing.
And
wish it was under better circumstances
yes.
for old Bruce here, but he's still an amazing.
We are giving him the incredible gift of letting him know how much he matters before he has to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What a wonderful individual. Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
I'm honored to do it.
Thank you.